Here we go again.
What's up, man?
Aaron Phillips, good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for supporting me here with this podcast. I was thinking this morning, and let's see, Aaron Phillips, badass husband to a badass wife, Dominique.
Yes.
Badass father, got two great young boys. President of the Christian Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
And former youth pastor.
Was, for sure.
Podcaster.
Yep.
Lead the discussion. Business leadership consultant.
Mm-hmm.
Am I missing anything else? you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, I think you're over exaggerating a little bit. But man, I just try to help people as much as I can and help people take their next step in life and leadership, whatever that looks like.
You've always had I was thinking of this too. You've always had a dominant spirit about you, and I think which is great for leadership, obviously, and especially to lead other men. You have to have that. Where did that come from?
So. This actually gets into, it's funny you asked that because I was just having a conversation with someone. And so one of the things that I use is called the 5 voices, which you're taking. And so so it's actually a personality trait of the pioneer. And it's very, very rare. It's not saying, but it also has its major negatives because we can talk and say something and we just say something haphazardly, but because that voice just happens to have more force for whatever reason, maybe it's a subconscious tone or whatever it is, it can be very, very dangerous to relationships, friendships, because all of a sudden you say something and now it's like, wait, what did you mean by that? And it's like, I didn't mean anything by it. I just...
Do you feel like most people are born with these qualities, though? Because, you hear that saying, like, natural born leaders. And, I feel like I'm a leader in a sense, but don't have the same personality.
Absolutely.
Or is it something that kind of grows over time based on your surroundings, based on your family, your parents, peers, where you kind of start to develop some of these qualities?
Yeah, I think that it's a makeup of 3 things. So there's nature, how God wired you, how you were where God put you at, the personality he gave you. Then there's nurture, how you were raised. All those things come in. And then there's choice. So I believe personally that there's no such thing as a natural born leader. I think that we kind of went that way. We hear a lot of those things simply because of old traditions, right? If you look at different cultures all across the world, they'll look at somebody, and if someone is born at this time, at this place with this feature, oh, they must be something special or something. And I don't think that that's necessarily, not necessarily, I don't think that's true at all. I think that we've met plenty of people who've been in leadership positions and they've been just terrible people. And so because of, and when you're in construction, and I think this is something that is just in the nature of the beast when it comes to any type of construction. I have some background in oil field construction, the good old boy system, which can be really beneficial when you find good people who do good work, but it can also be super harmful whenever it's, hey, I had this person, they're going to do it for us, and they have no idea what they're doing. They've never been on a construction site, never done anything, never even worn a hard hat, much less swung a hammer.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you're going to put them as a GC or responsible for following this blueprint, and they can barely read it themselves. So that natural born leader is that there could be some qualities to there's some things where people look at it and they just naturally gravitate towards that. But if you're going to be a great leader long term, and when I say long term, longer than 3 years, longer than 2 years, it's going to take some choices. And so we're a makeup of nature, nurture, and choice. And as we start to make those choices and we mature and we realize like this is not the way to do things.
To your point, like even with, like you said, culture back in the days, and even but with family, a lot of times the assumption is that the firstborn is going to be, the leader or the one that take over a business and whatnot. I mean, I don't know if you ever watched Succession. That's a good one.
Oh, I think that's a great example.
Yeah.
Like that one is spot on. Where you're like, hang on a second.
And so a lot of times I think it's just whatever your natural should dictate kind of where your direction in life should be, and whatever that passion is down the road. But I think leadership is something for sure that I think it's not that it's hard to attain, but it's a thing that sometimes people assume they have. and you can see it a few different ways. Lead by example, is one way, or lead by fear, lead by force. So there's all leadership, quote unquote traits, but they're not all good. Right. And so that's the challenge is figuring out what naturally is the best way to go.
Yeah, and so I actually use a tool for this, and we call it a support challenge matrix. And so, believe it or not, there's a way, and we break it up into quadrants, just how you said that. And we always want to be in a place where we are providing high support and high challenge, because when we're there, we create a culture of empowerment and opportunity. And so, but we can also, if you think of an XY axis, you have an area of high support and high challenge. We call it a liberating mindset. It's where people, they can come in and they recognize in your organization, man, wait, I'm empowered to make decisions. I'm empowered to do my job really well. And because I'm empowered, I see the opportunity for growth here. I see the opportunity to learn more skills, to develop as an individual. Those things are definitely attainable. But if you find, how you said, people lead by fear, well, we call that a dominating culture. And really what we're doing is, when we're in that area, we provide high challenge, but low support. And what it is it creates a culture of fear and manipulation. Because when you're dominating someone, you're saying, hey, do this or else.
Yeah. Is that a bad thing, though? Because you have successful companies that are like that, or run that way. I mean, maybe not morally or ethically in a sense, but if the end goal is work over people or profits over people, right, then you're going to do whatever you need to do to create a successful business, to build an empire, if you will. And maybe also to use that as a way to, not that I'm wired the same way, but to use that to build a ministry. Let's say maybe those type of people wouldn't really care for a ministry, but or build some sort of way.
No, they definitely would care for a ministry.
So I'm saying, absolutely. Sometimes you're treading over some of the people that help you get to where you're at, but to build something to help other people over here. And I don't know, that it's frowned upon sometimes, right? Like the dictatorial type leadership. But is it a bad thing at the end of the day? I guess if it's, if you're Hitler, of course, but it's from a business standpoint, it's interesting.
So, I would ask you this. Then my kind of question in that is, as a business owner yourself, what would you rather be known for? Someone who gets the job done, but you run through people and you're tough to work with, or someone who gets the job done, you have a good reputation among your peers, and you're always referred out?
For sure. No. Let me think. No, yeah. For sure. No, for sure. The second one.
Because you both can get the same result. Sure. It's just one of those, is that one takes work from the leader. Right. The other one takes more work from the people.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's where I was going back to my original question. Like, okay, maybe natural born leader is not the thing, but like naturally, instinctively, you're just that type of person. You grow. You're born a certain way. You got two boys. I mean, they're two different personalities.
You have three.
I have three, and they're all three different personalities. So it's not like we looked at each one of them and raised them differently. They just naturally have these different personalities. So it's, you can fall in one of the two categories there. And I for sure, I feel more passionate to try to help people and help them succeed and grow. And at the same time, help our business. I definitely look at it that way for sure.
And so I really love that whenever you had asked me that question about the, about those people who, the dominating, profit over people, and just kind of putting some cards on the table. So your personality is very much people over profit. You'll make sure that the person is taken care of, and the profits will work itself out in the end. Right. And so at least that's how I pray every morning. Yeah. God, let me I'm going to do this thing right here to help people, and then, he'll take care of the rest. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, so, cause you've taken the assessment. So of course I know, and, kind of unfair on that end, but it, kind of seeing that and knowing your voice order in those, so it was really cool that you had asked me that question, because those people who are that way, you're more than likely, because you yourself are very outspoken, you're more than likely would be the person that would make it a point to go, hey, there's a better way than doing it that way than dominating and destroying your people. Like, there's a better way. Let me show you how you run a crew. Let me show you how you run a company. Let me show you how you run an organization. And you go off and you do it on your own. Then being under somebody's quote unquote iron fist of, hey, my way or the highway, we're going to do it this way. And then.
So talk to me about your business. Is this some of the conversations you have with business owners and leaders to kind of help guide them through whatever challenges they have? Yeah,
it definitely is. I believe that every person, so we it's called the 5 voices is the assessment that I use, and it's extremely powerful. It not only lets you know who you are, but it really lets you know what it's like to be on the other side of you. And with those, and that was how I learned from that. I thought I was, we call it the connector, because I really make it a point to connect with people, to, encourage them, fight for them, all those good things, have, be super friendly, outgoing, all those things. So whenever I saw the 5 voices, I thought, oh, I'm a connector for sure. And it wasn't until I learned that, hey, every voice has flaws. And I realized that mine was, I can talk over people in meetings. I can bulldoze, if you will. My voice sounds really forceful. I remember I had someone, when I was a youth pastor, someone that I had, the person that I had to report to, she had told me, and I'll never forget it. She said, you have to be careful what you say, because your opinions come across very strong. And I thought, what do you mean? I mean, look at me. Like, at the time I was like, I was doing youth ministry. All I was running off was pizza and 4 hours of sleep, and so, and I was like, how am I intimidating? I'm like one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. But I learned, though, from the 5 voices that, man, okay, this is actually who I am. That's how I think. That's really what it is, even though I don't want to be that. And that's we call it our unconscious competence. That's just who we are. But then we have, whenever we're working, our conscious competence, which are things that we're paying attention to. Hey, I'm going to make sure that I do this. I'm going to make sure that I do that, and that part is, for me and for you, the connector part. Where it's, hey, I'm going to make sure that I'm making connections, that I'm helping people. We're consciously aware of that. And that was so helping other leaders and managers and team leads, and even some of them even potential leaders. I'll work with some people who are 24, 25, 26, and someone sees great potential in them, but they know that, man, this person is just raw. And so being able to come in and help them out and give them the tools and the self-awareness to really help them maximize their full potential. I think too many times we operate, the average, I don't know if you know this, but the average business operates at 58% efficiency. And
I believe that.
And so, and you can take that and you can look, well, what does that look like in terms of dollars and cents? If you're, bringing in, let's just keep it math simple, $20,000 a month for your business or your organization. And you can increase that by 5%. Right. I mean, that's an extra. Was that $1,250? So that's an extra. No, sorry. Yeah. So that's an extra. Sorry. That's an extra $1,000 a month. Yeah. Which equates to whatever it is, and that's but that's just for that 1 month. What happens when you start increasing, and 3 or 4 months, you've gone from 58% efficiency up to 70%. Yeah, you may not be at where you want to be, 85, 95%, but man, that's going to turn around and it's going to end up really helping you.
So the first step when you talk to the business owners is to unlock and get them to understand kind of where they land in that spectrum. And then that helps them maybe kind of go forward, I guess. Or because I'm assuming, and even before I took mine, because I'd never taken one before, but it did help me not only kind of realize that is who I am, but also kind of where my maybe weaknesses are or my blind spots are, what I can improve on. Because like you said, every voice has a, weakness to it or whatnot. And so that's the first thing to do, I guess, is get them to understand where they land in that spectrum. And then you kind of build some sort of, program for them?
Yes, yeah. So it's funny. I was talking with the pastor. He asked me the same thing. Like, hey, like, what's your process? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, you and I, we've known each other. Found out yesterday, right?
That was funny, dude. I have this picture to show to you. Well, you saw it, but I was cleaning up my photos and then randomly just. I saw your picture. Was it like an 80s theme night?
It had to have been.
For Dominique's birthday. Yes. And I was like, oh my God, this is so freaking hilarious.
It's amazing. Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is, if you can zoom in, Emily. By the way, can I shout out Emily Herrera and John Herrera with Origo, or Joe Origo. They helped me with the podcast and SEO and websites development, and they're great people. Thank you so much. But anyway, this is Dominique and Aaron about 14 years ago.
Yeah, so that was the.
You haven't really changed much other than the hair right here on your.
So if I shave it, I look that age. So that's
but it was funny. I ran across this. I was like, oh my God, it's like this so hilarious, man. Anyway,
yeah, and that was the thing, right? So normally, like whenever I sit down with somebody, it's really I think it's the same thing for you. You're trying to build a relationship first. Like, hey, my processes are a lot longer because it's not, we can't, we don't just flip the switch and change, 20, 30 years of nature, nurture, and choice, right? So there's definitely a process. So I'm normally working with individuals between 1 to 3 years. So that first one is really just a relationship building. Now, you and I, like we said, you pulled that out. That was 2010. So, which is crazy to say out loud. So we had that relationship, so then it's like, hey, okay. So then after that, I do send them that assessment. I'm like, hey, like just take this, give me your thoughts back on it. What do you think? Yeah. And then I'll walk through, a free 30-minute phone call then of like, hey, like here's what your voice order says. Now you're every single one of these voices. So, how you said may have that, for me, I have that could be, dominant or forceful voice. You have that same voice too. It may be tougher for you to access sometimes. And even when you do access it, you're like, oh man, I can't believe I gotta, I gotta pull out Ricky with an eye or something.
My alter ego. Yeah. My alter ego, Ricky with it.
But you know what I mean? So it's just one of those. You
don't want to see him.
Yeah. It's just one of those where it's, we call it our 70-30, 70% in what we're really good at and 30% in things that take us effort. Yeah. And so, those times where, you're going to work or you're doing something and you just feel like you're absolutely exhausted for the day. You didn't get anything done, and you look and you're like, man, I just spent all my time on administrative tasks or maybe I spent all my time selling. Just it's different per the individual. And they look and they're just like, man, I didn't get anything done today. I'm exhausted and those things. And so it's knowing like, okay, what's my 70% and what's my 30% from my voice order, and then being able to maximize your leadership, effectiveness, productivity, and influence through all those things.
It's tough, man. Like being a business owner is hard, and you have those days, you have those moments where you feel like you're not doing well, you're not succeeding, and you have those lulls. I have a few friends right now that are being challenged in business, and we try to encourage each other all the time. But the reality is, just like you're saying, those are moments where every business owner, no matter what industry, no matter what capacity they're in, if it's a multi-million-dollar or a small business, they all have those days where they are feeling like they're just tired, sluggish, ineffective. And I think that's where the value of what you do comes in, because it can definitely help people course correct, and kind of, or at least kind of help, be accountable in a sense, because we all get off track.
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes, man, to get back on and get that momentum. And it's challenging when you have momentum and then you do kind of slide for a second to get back on, So what do you think is the biggest, why do most businesses fail, do you think?
I think it's because of poor leadership. There's a company that I remember in the oil industry. It was a company called Forest Oil, 100-year-old company. They got new leadership and a new CEO, and he wanted to do a bunch of different things. They made a really outrageous gamble, and they ended up selling, having to close out, became some other company.
Basically, it's just because of one person.
One person, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure. And so, And that's one of those that's where, one of the things that I teach is with the 5 voices, you need to have all 5 voices in your life. Somebody that can help you. What ends up happening is too many times people fill their circle, their boardroom, whatever it may be, with people who only
yes men's.
Yeah, they only talk how they like to be talked to, and that's really, really dangerous, because if you're not hearing from from all 5 voices from someone, if you're not hearing from the nurturer, the guardian, the connector, the creative, the pioneer, each of these have their own superpowers, and you can leverage all those. Now, I'm not saying they all have to work for you, because sometimes for some people that may just be too many people. They're like, oh, hey, I'm a smaller outfit. It's just me and 2 other people or whatever it may be. They're trying to grow. But then you have other ones where, they're 200-300 people, and, then they're on their executive team. It's nothing but pioneers and guardians. And you're wondering like, hey, and all they're doing is kind of clashing back and forth all the time, but they miss out on leveraging connections. They can't really see trends as great as the creative can, and then they don't have a pulse on their organization like the nurturer does. And so each one of these has their own different superpower, if you will, and it's knowing what they champion. And I've seen so many people who they don't have a pioneer around, and so they can't strategize for the future. And that's where you have to make tough choices. And pioneers are notorious for being okay with making the tough choices. Where it's
if you're one like a nurturer, let's say, sometimes you take longer to make those choices.
Absolutely,
or you push it. I feel like I'm pretty decisive when I have the choices to choose from. But if it's something that I sometimes push off because I don't have clear choices. I think I do it to myself more than anything. Absolutely. But I think you're right as far as having that pioneer mindset where you're just kind of moving that goal forward by making these choices that you have to make in business.
Now that's the tough thing though too, so in that same regard is you have, if you just have that pioneer voice who's making those tough choices, if they're not healthy, they're going to hurt a lot of people. Right. A lot of people. And the same thing, how you said, nurture. If they're not healthy, they'll just end up just building something incredible, but they would just get stagnant. And then that's when they're like, man, okay, but I don't want to do this because I don't want to upset Tommy. Right. I don't want to do this because I don't want to upset Susie. And those are, by the way, if you're Tommy or Susie listening, I'm sorry, but and it's one of those because they care so much about the relational harmony and they champion people so well that
they're afraid to, kind of hurt people or. I get that because that sometimes that's where the passive aggressiveness comes in, right? Because you want to be forceful, but then you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or you're afraid of what they may say or think afterwards. Yeah. So that's
and my encouragement always to nurturers is no one ever thinks that you're forceful, like really and truly, like people
except for my wife.
Yeah. Right. It's because I have another client who's an architect and he's a nurturer, genius individual. And he's like, man, I really want to challenge this guy. And so, and here's where one of those things, the challenges comes in, with the nurturer is that because they have such a good pulse on people, that sometimes whenever it's a connector or a pioneer, those connector, creatives and pioneers, these are all future oriented voices, and they only make up 27% of the population. So when those individuals are in your organization and they're just not getting the hint, right, that the other 73% of the population would be able to understand, hey, do you realize you're doing a really bad job? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? And there's no way. Most nurturers don't want to just tell him that. And he was like, man, I don't want to tell him he's not doing what he signed up, what his job description is, all these things. And he's trying to challenge him. And so I told him, I said, you need to just tell him very, very clearly, because he's not getting, how you said, the subtle hints. And there are people who don't get those subtle hints. And I'm one of them. I'll be, there's some things that I'll just get so laser focused, I won't get that subtle hint. So the nurturer looks at it and goes man, I told this guy time and time again, and I've noticed some passive aggressiveness is coming out. Mm-hmm. I need to just spell it out plainly for him. Hey, Bobby, if you don't do this, these are going to be the actions that we're going to have to move forward. I believe that you can do it. I can support you in doing that. What do you need from me to help you do that? That's that high support and high challenge. You're bringing the reality to the situation, but you're still allowed to be, quote unquote, forceful. But most nurturers, they think that they're like, man, I'm being too forceful.
Yeah.
I would encourage you, go for it. People they just don't take that from you because because they just instinctively know you're for them. Yeah. Like you're gonna. I mean, I remember. Sorry, I know, but I'm just remembering one time we were. We were playing volleyball, or I'm pretty sure we were playing volleyball together. And I always had this goofy thing where I would, put the ball in between my legs when it's game point and serve underhand. And there was one time I came up and you noticed that there was really bad tension on the other team because we were beating them pretty bad.
Dominated, baby.
Yeah, we were. And you came up to me and you go, "Hey, don't do that." And I was like, "What?" I always do it. I mean, this is the only time. Like normally, like you're my encourager because it's lighthearted, it's fun. Yeah. It was co-ed, and so it's a fun trick. Right. But I remember that, and you just came up and you're like, "Hey, don't do that. Like tensions are high, bro, or high. Don't do that."
I tend to try to be a peacemaker sometimes, or not sometimes, a lot. I think.
Well, but even that, you're very competitive. You're and you're very good athletically. Yeah. When we weren't right, when we weren't concerned about.
I couldn't do the spikes like you did all the time. So,
but when we played softball, you were way better. So, but those are the things though that. And I think that's just a perfect example of, hey, knowing just the pulse, and then no one would take that, if you were doing that, people would see that lighthearted, funny. If I'm doing that, because of just our different voices, how we're perceived. Absolutely. If you only knew how many times. And so that's been a journey for me.
Yeah. So when you're working with business owners, you said it usually is like a journey from 1 to 3 years. What kind of metrics do you use to make sure that you're on the right path? They're being successful. Do y'all do, other than establishing voices, right? Yeah. Consulting with them. Do you look at their sales, their finances? Talk to me about how that works.
So one of the things that I just request, people don't have to give it to me, is I just ask for sales, because what I do is I like to take leadership out of the feeling realm and put it into the practical, where we have to be able to measure it. Because when we can measure it, we can see if something's growing. Right. So I just ask, like, hey, so if we're working together, I need to make sure that I'm 10xing your investment. So because in whatever amount of time that we had, that we've mutually agreed upon, that I can 10x your investment. So if you're, if whatever we're doing for your team, if it's not providing a 5 to 10x value, then it's not a good investment for you. And I know that seems really aggressive.
No, but it makes sense because it actually pushes you and pushes the business owner, right, to make sure that as a business owner, your whatever investment it is, because I feel like even, let's say, marketing or SEO or whatever it is, like if I'm spending $1,000 a month and I'm getting 10,000 in return, I'll spend 10,000 a month and get 100. Right. So long as that ROI is there, but just understanding kind of where that value is in investing in a consultant, right, or in someone that's going to be there in your ear. My biggest thing would be like, well, how do I measure the return? How do I measure that this is working? Because there's one thing about having someone to kind of pep you up and get you excited and hold you accountable, which obviously, I've got a bunch of group texts that do that as well. But to your point, being, I think the hard part for business owners is being somewhat vulnerable with where they are in their business, which could translate in their life maybe, which has an effect on their business. And being transparent. Right, being honest, like, okay, man, listen, Aaron, I've known you for a long time, 14 years, but man, do I really want to, share this with him, or do I really want to be this honest with him? And that's on us, right? Because I think we want to be able to say, oh no, we're doing good. Yeah, I need help. I need a little bit of a boost here and there. But sometimes, that's kind of where we're masquerading kind of where we're at in our journey in our business. It could be anyone, right?
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that you'd probably want to ask from your potential clients to make sure that this is a win-win is that the owner has to be super transparent, super vulnerable, be willing to listen. If you're going to invest that time and money, listen and take actions and do what that person's telling you to do for you to be able to kind of hopefully benefit from them, I guess, right? So,
so for me, my style is that I like more of the very rarely do I ever come in and say, hey, you need to do this, unless it's one of those where they're like, hey, I'm having a massive problem with this person, and it's over and above, then I can. All right, hey, here are 3 things that I would recommend. A firm recommendation. Most of the time, it's I believe that God has. The way I like to describe it is, it was an old sermon that I heard, but I believe that the miracle is in the house. Like everything you need is inside of you somewhere. And it's just unlocking you to your full potential.
Well,
and so
you're right, because I think the hard, because I have friends that use business coaches and basically sing the praises of some of the people that help them see things differently, right? The different insights, the different the blind spots that you may have that someone else can tell you, like, listen, you're exceeding here, but you're really not doing a good job over here. And a lot of times we're just so blinded by how we do things. We need someone else with a fresh set of eyes to come in and kind of helping us unlock, whatever's in us, right?
Yeah, and that's really that's my focus is to just help unlock people to their full potential in that, and that is and it is the vulnerability comes whenever there's trust. We call it we I have a tool that we use to describe it, and it's basically there's a wall of self-preservation that we all have. And in that wall of self-preservation, there's a couple of questions, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but in those questions, it's, what am I afraid of losing? And I think that's a big one. And the other one is, who am I trying to impress? And so
that's good.
Yeah. And so there's
that second one's super,
it is.
It hits home to me sometimes a lot.
I think, and it does for everyone, because we can look at those and we can go, and so I always have to leave the teaser, so I leave the third question out, but but even just those two can really help us look at it and go, okay, why is my wall of self-preservation up? Now of course we have to build trust, and you're not just going to go up to everybody and have your wall down, but at some point, we do have to have our wall does need to come down with our spouse, with our kids. What if your kids always walked around with their self-preservation wall up? Every time you try to coach them, teach them,
right.
Your boys are in that place where they're starting to make real life decisions. Right. Mine, my youngest is trying to figure out what he wants for breakfast. My oldest is in that place where he's starting to figure out what he's going to become. And so, and knowing his voice order and his personality, I think he's a superhero, because those are just things that I just don't have.
I'm sure he thinks you're his superhero,
right?
Too. Yeah.
I think we all have that, right? But it's noticing that self-preservation wall and then going like, okay, what am I afraid of losing, and who am I trying to impress? And we can kind of bounce back and forth between those two, and then really start to unlock. Okay, why do I have this tendency? Why do I? Future-oriented voices. A lot of times they can look at it and go, they can become procrastinators, because they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's super important, but I'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And fear of failure comes in, because they're like, wait a minute, and they don't realize they've kicked the can down the road too far. Now they have to run and go get the can. Guardians and nurturers, that growth can be sometimes so slow that the guardian is so concerned about their system and their process, because it's worked, that they never want to change it. And then the nurturer can be one of those who they just don't, they don't want to offend people. So they kind of, they push a little bit, and if it doesn't just break through, they'll kind of back off and then maybe try to find a different way around. And so it's amazing how, when we address those two questions, what am I afraid of losing? man, the nurture, I'm afraid of losing people. The guardian, I'm afraid of losing process. Connector, I'm afraid of being rejected. The pioneer, I'm afraid of losing. The creative, I'm afraid of being accepted. I'm afraid of being not accepted. And so, and then you can find out what you're afraid of, and then, and then what are you trying to prove, what are you afraid of losing, and then what are you trying to prove? And then you can kind of answer those questions and go, okay, as I'm working with somebody, where's my wall up? Where's their wall up? Where do we need to bring down? And even these things, these are tools that I use to help not just the leader, the organization, but then the other thing too, it doesn't help if you always have to, in my opinion, if you always have to pay somebody to come in and fix everything. My goal is that you can learn these tools, and that way they help you grow in your organization. So then you become that liberating leader who everyone who comes into your organization, they're lifted to the culture that you set.
Yeah, those are tools for business and for life, though, too, man.
They are.
Yeah. So, do you specialize in just any industry, or commercial, or construction, or?
Yeah. So the main industry that I focus on is, I call it AEC: architects, engineers, and construction trades, and then churches. And so the reason that I really enjoy the AEC part is because, man, I give props to you, because the people that you deal with are, they're everywhere. We talked about it before, even on another one where, you'll go and do a commercial project, or even sometimes if you're doing a big home renovation, and then the city gets involved. And then the city gets involved, and they have to have, and then now they pull a permit, and they say, well, now you need to go fix this. So then you have to go send off to an engineer who has to send it to an architect, and it goes back and forth. And you go from, I look around this room, you and your guys, you could come in here and you could be like, yeah, I could build this whole room in my sleep. But then if you have all these other people who start getting involved, you have to manage those relationships, and that's where it gets really, really difficult, because now it's no longer just, I see all this, I can build this whole thing, no problem. Now it's, wait a minute, now we have to make sure an engineer signs off on it. Do we get the architect's approval on this? And so it's something that was, I think it's just like life, right? Something that was just such a small problem. Now.
Yeah. Did you have a history in construction or experience? I think you mentioned something about the oil. Are you from Odessa? Or?
I am from Odessa. Yeah. And so, so my dad had an oil field construction company, and I kind of learned a lot.
Gotcha.
So you
already kind of have a feel for how all this works in a sense.
Yeah, and that was how I learned, because there was one that I was I installed the largest septic system in Ector County. At the time, it was 2 swimming pools. So went and got my septic system license, and I was working for my dad at the time. And so we, it was this man camp, and so we had to do all that. And the amount of times that we got stopped, backed up, had to wait, paid for an excavator to be on site. How many times that thing broke teeth? Because in West Texas, it's like up, around the Stone Oak area, you have 2 inches of
rock,
soil. And then it's all rock. I mean, that's how West Texas is. I mean, we didn't even, whenever you would go and lay a foundation for a house, you would just take a bulldozer and cut the ground and just flip it over and then roll it over, and then you could pour concrete on it. That was it. Like, you were. I mean, so it's one of those where you can, think of, building a house, man, you can pump stuff out with, concrete slabs and stuff. So I had, that was an area that I had noticed that, like, well, wait, I'm going to have to talk to, I'm the GC, so I'll have to, work with the city, wait for a city manager, an inspector, someone to come out, take a look at it, have to explain what we did, how we did it, have to work with an engineer who drew up the plans, and then, architect who looked at the building. And so, all those different things. And then, I was, and coming from that, looking at it and go, man, that is strenuous in my opinion. Now, of course, you'll have different people who, we have good relationships. It's easy for us to work together. At the same time, I've seen some of those healthy relationships deteriorate because poor communication with the other, the individuals weren't understanding, they weren't working together, and then all of a sudden the problem wasn't the problem anymore.
Right.
The person was the problem.
People.
Yep.
So this gives you, it's actually natural for you to kind of help other owners in this type of industry because you've got the experience behind it. So I think you're a little more sympathetic to their needs and their issues. I love your podcast, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
The discussion. Do you use that as a platform to help your business, or how did that get started?
So that got started because I've always talked.
Dude, you're a natural, bro. I've listened to a few of the podcasts that you have, and I think that hardest part for me, I think it's easy because I'm just bouncing off questions and kind of just feeding off the guests in front of me. But you're there most of the time. You just on your own, right? You just do these little conversations, which I think is super, super hard. I couldn't sit in front of a camera or just do a podcast on my own. I'd be fumbling and I wouldn't even know what to talk about. So you're very, very good at it, by the way.
Well, thank you. It's actually the most difficult part.
Is it really?
For sure. It definitely is, because these are easier, right? Because we have the human interaction. It is more that presentation. Now, I have done public speaking and I've spoken to,
that's true. Yeah,
so I've done well over 500 talks in front of people. Yeah.
Wow.
So I do have that vein where I can.
Do you put like cardboard cutouts of people in front of you while you're
I
doing
wish. I wish. And so I probably should. It would make it a lot easier. But for me, I just have this overwhelming desire to help people. And there's some people who can't afford me or my rates or any of those things. And I get that. There's some people who are just starting out, but I still want to be able to help them. And that's a way that I can provide some insight. There's still, doing youth ministry for over 15 years and even managing those generational gaps of, hey, we have this parent who had kids later on in life, and now, they're in their 60s and now they have a 14-year-old. And man, you want to talk about, not seeing eye to eye, like, and even that, the amount of technology that's now available, how it works. They tell them, oh, hey, Snapchat, it's not that big of a deal. It just, it disappears after you send it. Well, and the parent believes them, but then you find out that's not really true. Like there's these things called servers, and your name is tied to that account. And they can go access that whenever they want, or if they're hacked or any of those things. So it's not a safe place. How a 14-year-old would understand that, wouldn't understand that. They would say like, oh, well, it's gone. It's not on my phone anymore. It disappeared. They don't realize like the cloud is these massive data centers that's all they do is hold information. And so helping them come in with that communication. And it really, as I was doing youth ministry for over 15 years and then construction, I noticed that the main thing was that you're going to communicate with so many different people based upon, their age, their background, all these things.
Right.
And then that's whenever learning about the 5 voices, it was for me life-changing, because now it was no longer, hey, that's an age thing. It's, hey.
Sure, you understand where they come from.
Absolutely.
But the podcast you've had for a couple of years now?
Yeah. So on season 2, I release about 40 episodes a year. That gives me time also in between.
How do you come up with your weekly ideas or?
Yeah. So it's questions that I've had of, whether it be, you and I talking from this. I probably got a couple of ideas for, my own life experiences, as well as some of my clients. And then even some of the tools that I use, I can just break down a talk and explain it, because from that, there's so much information. There's one that I just used. I just used yesterday. Talking about the change equation with someone, and they're looking at opening up another store. They can't quite figure it out. They feel like they have the right people on their team, and there's someone there who could take over the next store that they open up, but they're really not sure. And so, but the individual he's reached that breaking point where there's going to be a drastic change. It's just, will that change happen for positive or will it happen for negative? And so, because we can make a change and it not be a good one,
right?
But it's okay. So it's it's how dissatisfied are you with the status quo? What's your vision for the future? And do you notice your natural next step? And it's a tool that I use whenever whenever my clients or someone comes up and they're like, man, I want to do this. And I'm like, well,
something different.
Yeah. And so, and I ask them, like, all right, well, so let's go through this and let's see, are we really ready to make the change? Because in all that, we're going to face resistance.
Yeah. And it's cool that you talk about that, because that's essentially free info or value info that you're just serving to the world in a sense. And actually, I listened to the one you had last week, which I actually really, really loved. The Ta-da.
Oh, yes.
And it came out last week, I think.
Yeah.
And I shared it with a group text of mine, of friends this morning, in fact. I was working out, I was listening to it. And talk to me about that one, because that's a great acronym, and it's a simple way, especially for accountability and for people to kind of maybe can get in a rut and challenged. I thought it was pretty encouraging, man. Just kind of share with us if you don't mind, kind of that one.
Absolutely. So it's just part of my process. And so all the tools that I use, if you were, as long as you graduated the 8th grade, you'll understand it completely. So everything that I use is designed for an educated 13-year-old to be able to understand. So that's a big part of it. And we use, so the Ta-da is a tool. So we use a tool that most leadership tools are only made for the top 15% of leadership, really IQ. And that's really difficult, because even those individuals, I know a guy who he's a COO for a rocket launching company. And he said, you would be surprised at how smart some of these people are, but yet how dumb some of them are at the same time. He said they could literally send a rocket and drop it within 2 feet from you, 2,000 miles away. But you would, but they like the relationships are terrible. Everything else, things that you're just like, whoa, I did not realize. So our tools are, giant tools. What I use, it's designed for literally 100% adoption rate instead of the 15%.
So you're not leaving out 85% of the world or the population. I mean, it's something that anyone, like you said, with an 8th grade IQ at least can understand, make it simple.
And that helps too, because now, as the leader, you can now get to a point where you can lead your organization, your company, whatever that may be, and not have to go back and go, oh, well, now I got to go back and tell them again and tell them again and tell them again. Especially after, teenagers, you're just like, I'm just tired of repeating myself. But we use a tool, and it's something that is understandable. So something that, and there's some NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, so where we can see it, hear it, experience it, and that really hits everyone's learning style. Some people say they're auditory learners, they're visual learners, they have to be a mixture of both, or they have to be experiential. With the tools that we use, we can encompass all of that. And so by showing the tool, walking it out, and talking through it, it allows us to go, okay, man, I really understand this now.
Right. So that's the T in the Ta-da.
T. So the T is, it's a tool. The A is actionable. It has to actually work.
That's the natural next step.
Absolutely.
That's what I love about it. Yeah.
Like, it has to be actionable. It can't just be something that I go, oh, okay, that was cool. I'm never going to use that again. Right. Like, it's not calculus. Like how many times?
I think I've ever used calculus in my life.
Right. And so it's just one of those, most times some of us, we don't even use algebra. Or, very few of us use geometry. I mean, there's so many different things. Our English isn't scrutinized, or, when was the last time you got quizzed on the periodic table? I get those things, and they're necessary, but the tool has to be actionable. It has to be something that I can take this and I can use this tomorrow. I can use this today in my next meeting that I have with someone. I can use this with my family. It has to be actionable. And so that's the second A, or the first A. And then D is document. Know where we're at. So
that's an important step for sure.
It really is. And both of us have the same blind spot, which is the guardian, which is the processes and so like having a very detailed process that goes out. And we think we're we're good, and some people would think we're good at being process oriented until you meet a guardian and you're like, that's like your whole life. My wife is that person, so I kind of see that and I go, wow, that's a superpower, because I don't think that way of asking 30 questions before I make one move. I ask 2 questions, seems legit, and then like, let's keep going. And so, but that documentation part is so important. Using weightlifting or as an example, or exercise, as you start to track, you start to notice your progress.
So that's just the way a metric to be able to see that what you're doing is working, basically.
Absolutely.
That's the part that I think people skip, because they'll start taking the action, but they don't really keep track of whether or not they're moving forward or they're gaining any traction.
For sure. And we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can accomplish in 5. And so it's one of those that we can look at, and if we document, we can look and go, oh my goodness, I was at a 30 on, using that flywheel, because you're familiar with it. So my communication was at a 30. It's at a 50. That's a big jump. I mean, that's 20 points. So, and let's say that takes 2 years to get. Well, you're averaging now 10 points per year. That's a big jump. So then you can expect then for the next one, and we're not just looking at where we're trying to go, but we're also looking at where we came from.
Right.
So we can also learn from that. So we want to document. The other reason that helps with documentation is it just helps all around. It helps you know where you're at, know where you're going, and know what to avoid. There are certain people who they will never hire this type of person ever again. If you have it documented, it's helpful. So we want to document. We want to write it down. Hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm struggling with. And then as we go through it again for another time, sometimes you'll go through the tool again, and you'll notice that that self-preservation. Maybe you only address what you're afraid of losing, and the next time through it, you go, wait, now who am I trying to impress? Right. And so, and then we look at that and we go, it's documented. I answered one question the first time. Now I'm answering both questions this time. And then the last one is accountability. We have to be able to have that accountability. And accountability is not a bad word. It's something that really helps us, and it maximizes growth. It's not one of those where people are, if you're with the right people, where it's not a gotcha moment where they're setting up and like, oh, gotcha. Right. It's a, hey, man, this is an area that we slipped and fell in. I love what the Bible says. When 2 walk together, it's better, because if one falls, the other can. It's accountability. Right. It's not waiting for the other person to fall to laugh. Right. It's being there when they fall to lift them up. For sure.
I love that. Tada is, you kind of broke it down a little deeply, but that podcast I listened to just kind of opened my eyes again. But that little acronym, it could be something simple. You read a book, that's your tool. You use like, okay, well, let me take action. Let me, follow this step. And then let me document, write down, track where I'm at. And then just even if you have to, be vulnerable and have other people help you accountable, or just there's got to be that accountability there, because if there's not, then it's easy to kind of get off course, get off track. And so I really enjoyed that one. And like I said, I shared it with some friends of mine this morning. But what do you do? I know you don't. I know you stay busy with the consulting and you got your podcast, you got your family, but what do you do for fun?
Oh man, you and I both know we need to hit the links. I love
just a softball question there.
Man, I love to golf. For me, golf is it's just like the game of life. Like you get bad breaks from good shots and good breaks from bad shots, and there are things that, but eventually it's a game that you can somewhat figure out. However, there's always going to be wild cards. There are always going to be things that don't, the ball doesn't go your way. Shout out to Rory McIlroy. No,
my gosh, that was crazy. I was actually glad Bryson one. I'm more of a team live guy, but
okay, yeah. I mean, and that was the thing. That was a great story. You know, he had lost his dad a year and a half ago, and to win that on Father's Day was just like, whenever I heard that stat, I mean, it about brought me to tears. I was like, hold it together. But it was So I love to play golf.
It's such a tough sport, man. And like, it is. I think the only thing that we usually do when we're done with it, we take away that one good shot that we had. You know, like, oh man, that was a badass, approach shot or drive. But we discount all the other bad shots that we had. But
the 3-putt, the 4-putt, all those things that happened, or that one time that you sunk a 45-foot putt, and you're like, guys, I'm him. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go try out for live. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go work to get on the tour now. Like I have that inside of me. So
it's fun. It's definitely you have to have a strong mind for that game for sure. My friend's got his son. Yeah, that's playing. I think he's gonna start. He plays for the high school.
Oh wow.
And he plays golf also, but he's like. The challenge that he tries to, encourage his son with is just, it's such a mental sport, like he's a good raw player, but then, when you have those bad moments, you can just veer off course. So golf is for me, like just at my age now, I don't care, but like it's one of those mental sports that teaches you a lot of lessons about just kind of forgetting about that bad shot, moving on to the next one. Right. And that's again, back to life, right? You have that bad day, get back on track. And then just wait for that one moment, that one sale in business gets you kind of reinvigorated. Like, dude, you've been having this lull in sales and you get that one sale, that one great shot, it's like, back, baby, I'm back. But that's why I love the sport as well, man. So
I think you hit it right on the head. And because of that, too, golf is that one thing, too, where if you're just so focused on the, what failed the last time, that bad shot, your body will do what you're telling it not to do because that's all that you're thinking of. You're not thinking of what you should do. You're thinking of what you should not do. Yeah. And because that becomes your focus, I'd like to say our focus is our attention is a magnifying glass. Whatever we focus on grows or it gets bigger. And so then we end up repeating that mistake. And so that's I'm with you, man. Golf is the game of life for sure.
We'll need to hit it up soon. So
we do. I played. I got to play. I got to play a lot the past 2 weeks, and did not play as good as I thought I was. And so I knew, but I should have known better because I had like a 2-month lull, and I was like, I'm gonna get out here and stink this place up. Yeah. But like you said, the one good shot always brings you back.
That's right, baby. Listen, man, I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your wisdom. I appreciate your friendship. You have a natural gift from God, I think, just to be able to lead people, and hope people can see that, recognize that, and your podcast is amazing. I hope and pray that grows for you and it helps people in their journeys. And and if someone needs someone to kind of lead them in their business, in their leadership, I will definitely tell people I know a guy. Aaron Phillips, I appreciate you, Bubba. Thanks so much.